Students come back starting
The following week.
next following. Exactly right.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
It's going to be exciting to see all the kids on campus.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mr. Rip, I have a question.
Yes.
Who is going to give the instructions in Spanish for the people to get into the Spanish channel?
There is no Spanish channel, so if we do have Spanish speakers join, we're going to have just everything translated on this channel.
Oh.
Does that work for you?
Yes, but it's going to take longer now because everything you guys said, I had to say it in English, right?
That's correct.
But if we have a channel that I can say it and the people get into the Spanish channel, I can do it simultaneously and do it at the same time. I don't know if you can do it, again to get that translation picture into your Zoom.
I think the only issue would be I would have to be on that and I need to be on this.
Okay, no problem. I'll do it whatever you want me to do.
So and I knew that like if this becomes a regular practice, then we can set that up. But given the context, I think we're going to have to do it this way right now.
Sure, no problem. So yes, give me a hint. When should I enter?
Okay, we'll just make sure to pause periodically when we are commenting.
Okay, so I'll take notes. Thank you, sir.
Hi, Nick.
In the future, oh, sorry. Hey, Nick. In the future, maybe we could set up a separate, like a phone line that people can dial into and put Nubia on that phone line so she can watch here, remain muted, and speak into that phone line. Something like that. I don't know. We can diagnose something.
Sure.
Hello.
Hi there.
Welcome.
I like your background.
Thank you. It's hiding all this stuff behind me. I'm in the
Hi, Larry.
Hi.
How are you?
Doing well. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Hey, Larry.
Hey.
We have.
I'm not a cat.
Gershom. Hi, Gershom. Do we know if Olivia's going to make it? Do you know?
She did not email me. So I'm assuming that she will, but
Okay.
it is 5:31.
It is 5:31 and we have a majority of the board, so we are going to get started. We're calling the meeting at 5:31. Just write my notes down. And we have a record of the guests and our board members. So we have 3 board members here. Can we have just an introduction around of who is present on the call, just so that we know? So I'll just start with myself. My name is Mary Novice, and I am stepping in tonight. I'm a board member stepping in tonight to lead the meeting outside of Mike, who is not here. Larry, do you want to go?
So I'm Larry Valabi. I'm a board member. This is my first year on the board.
Gershom, you're next.
I'm also a member of the board in my first year as well.
Okay. And I don't know, just
Yeah.
Emily. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, Josh. Just chime in. Any of you guys chime in at one point.
Josh Rip, head of school at Saba.
I'm Emily. I teach 8th grade English at Saba.
Daniel Ornelas. I'm the operations manager at Saba.
And Emily, just so you know, I'm a recovering English teacher.
Oh, goody.
Hi, everybody. Nick
I'm
Driver,
Katrina
consultant
Johnson.
at Saba.
Hi, Nick.
Thank
I'm
you, Nick.
Katrina Johnson. I'm the director of student services at Saba, and I'm also an English teacher. And it is FOOD time for my dog, so I'm gonna turn off my mic here so I don't interrupt people.
FOOD, so you can't even say the word because the dog knows?
Nope.
That's pretty funny.
We won't say the word either.
And I think they're learning to spell.
Okay, we have Cindy and Nubia. Is that how you say that? And if you could just introduce yourselves, that would be great.
My name
Nubia,
is,
how about you?
yeah, my name is Nubia Aguirre. I'm the Spanish interpreter for tonight's event. Thank you.
Okay, and we have Jacob, sorry, I get it. Can you introduce yourself, please?
He's muted.
Okay, Cindy, can you introduce yourself? Does anybody know who these two are by any chance? Josh, do you know? Daniel, do you
No.
know?
No, but it's okay. It's it's not required to sign into any board meeting. So if they don't want to, they don't have to.
Okay, I'm just out of curiosity.
Sure. Sure.
Okay, moving on to approval of the agenda. If there is no changes, can I have a motion and a second to approve?
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you, Larry, and a second. Thank you, Gershom. Larry, how do you vote?
Aye.
Gershom?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Motion passes. So now we're on to I03 or I3, I3, sorry. Public comment, and this is the time where we take public comment on items that are not on the agenda. So is there anything that that the public wants to discuss again on items not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to action items. So our first one is the consent agenda, and we have our warrants and the staffing report. Do we have any questions from our board members on this? If not, can I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Thank you, Gershom, and a second.
I'll second.
Okay, and before I say all in favor, I'm just wondering if there's any questions from the public on any of the consent items that they may want to address. Okay, seeing none, Gershom, how do you vote?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Motion passes. We go on to B, Saber's fourth quarter reopening plan. It's all yours, Josh.
Okay, so for this agenda item, this is a resolution to reopen Saba College Prep in a hybrid format for quarter 4. The way that this will work is 6th grade will reopen in a hybrid format beginning April 13th, 7th and 8th grade, April 20th, and our high school, April 21st. Hybrid middle school will be on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Hybrid high school will be on Wednesdays and Fridays. Stable cohort will attend 5 days a week. Stable cohort students were identified based on need and were selected for that. Students who attend hybrid, that's open to anyone. So anyone who would like to attend Saba in the hybrid format can. And then along with that, we have some updates to our COVID prevention plan. Just as a reminder, the COVID prevention plan was implemented December 15th. It's for Saba staff, and the updates to this plan were the updated physical distancing requirements from going from 6 down to 3 that came out in March. We also added testing availability here at Saba. We're going to do our first round of that this Thursday, and then staff and students alike can test here at Saba. No one is required to test, but they are able to. And then finally, also within this is our credentialed teacher and staff in-person stipends. So for this particular item, we are going to pay credentialed teachers $200 per day to teach on Zoom and in person simultaneously. For in-person support staff, which is the rest of our Saba staff, they will receive $100 per day as a stipend for quarter 4. Those stipends begin next week.
Okay. Do we have any questions from our board members, Larry or Gershom?
No, I'm good.
You're good. I had just a typo on the resolution in the now be it resolved, first day of thin person instead of just in person. So just so that you
Oh, okay.
know that.
All right. Thank you.
And then I did have questions on some of the other ones. So on the stipends, it
Yep.
says you can still be eligible for a stipend. It says that at the bottom. So how does that happen?
How does it, let me open up the actual doc.
So is it that it's established at one point and then during the year it can still, is that what that's meant by that? I wasn't sure. Let me see where I have it, number 6. So I think it's at the very bottom. Staff members obligated to isolate. Now, where is it? Am I in the right one?
Oh, we'll still be eligible for either the in-person teaching stipend or in-person support stipend. Yeah, I do see what you're saying that. So what that's clarifying is if there is a isolation or quarantine order, you will not lose your stipend because it's a order from the state or the county to stay home during the isolation or quarantine period.
Okay. Okay.
So that
Thank
was
you.
a clarification as to what happens should that circumstance.
Okay. Should that scenario happen?
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Do we have any comments from our public? I'm just curious if there are comments from our public on any of these items. Okay, seeing none, can I get a motion? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Emily.
I'm just kind of curious about the rationale for the 8 to 12 versus 8 to 4 for credentialed and non-credentialed.
So we needed teaching staff here for the school day. The school day with students runs 8 to 12. And then we need support staff here for different projects throughout the day. And so they need to be here from 8 to 4.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, can I get a motion to approve? Sorry. Number B of the action items, the reopening plan,
So moved.
and a second.
I'll second.
Larry, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Gershom?
Aye.
And I as well. Motion passes. Okay, we are on now to item C, save a full-time teaching staff policy. It's all yours. Oh, it's Larry. It's Larry.
It's me. I'm starting this conversation.
Well, I don't know. It has your name next to it. So I don't know if Josh wants to start it or if Larry wants to start it.
Josh, why don't you start it?
Okay.
I'll jump in.
So SEBA was faced with the decision of how to accommodate part-time teachers in the school year, given that part-time teachers need to be compensated hourly rather than salaried. The reason for that is the minimum salary is above what a part-time 0.5 teacher could earn. And so SEBA has been paying teachers hourly for a few years now. And then after a discussion with our board president, Michael Jones, who is not with us tonight, he recommended that we implement this full-time staff, teaching staff policy. After some thinking, I followed through with his recommendation to implement this policy. And so that's why it's on the agenda today.
So I think it's absolutely the right recommendation for the policy for all kinds of reasons. The biggest reason I see is the equity issue. I don't know it. I was in the business for 43 years. I taught for 25. I was administrator for 18. And in regular comprehensive high schools, you know which teachers are working 9 to 5 and which ones aren't. And when you go to a school like SEBA, you don't want those teachers that work 9 to 5. You want teachers who are committed to the mission and committed to serving the needs of the students. And that's not a 9 to 5 job. So when you have a full-time teacher who is teaching well over 9 to 5 hours, paid at a salary, and you have a part-time teacher who's getting paid by the hour, that just makes for a real inequity that I don't think is viable. And I don't think it's sustainable for the school to be able to do that.
And I know when I was reading this over and looking at it, I also thought, you know, anytime I make decisions, because I do work for a school, is what's best for kids. That's always been my mantra. I've been a board member at another district for over 20 years, and all of our decisions are made with that primary focus, because that is really important. Back to your point, Larry, too, is the inequity piece, which is not fair. And so I totally understand why this policy has been brought forward. I know, Gershom, do you have any feedback on this that you may want to put in? Because I will open it up to the public as well so that we can get their input.
I mean, not really, because as a parent that I've always been on the side of being the parent, you don't really get to find out if a particular teacher is full-time or part-time. But definitely teachers do stand out when they do a really good job and care about the kids. And for the time that we've been here with Seva and also with my other daughter at another charter school, you can tell the difference between the teachers that are at a charter school versus some of those teachers that are at a public school, unfortunately. But like I said, I don't have any info as to like who's part-time, who's not, or
Okay.
their job.
Do we have comments from the audience that someone may want to speak to this item?
Go ahead, Donna.
Okay. Hi, I'm Donna Lefevre. I'm the math teacher at Seva. I've been, this is my 5th year working at Seva, and I'm actually a part-time teacher. And I'd actually written up something I wanted to share in public comment that had to do with something more than just this issue, but I didn't hear about this issue until it was on the board minutes. So I'm going to just read what I had, but it kind of addresses both, I think.
Absolutely.
So I brought up at a staff, okay, thank you. I brought up at a staff meeting at the start of the year that the tasks being asked of teachers were too much. Things like we're balancing Zoom instruction time, student support and office hour time, planning for digital instruction, giving feedback to the work done through digital assignments, attending staff meetings, staying in communication over email, reading and processing and acting on the information presenting in the blog each week, updating the family newsletter each week, completing an engagement log indicating the participation of all students in our classes each week, and participating in other meetings that come up throughout the year, like testing implementation, IEP meetings or cost meetings, ILP meetings. And then as a teacher, if you're trying to develop your instruction to implement DEI, which is the diversity, equity, inclusion, collaborate with other teachers or grade levels or subject areas, or you're trying to bring in more real world connections to your class, which are really important practices for instructing the whole student. You're then, as a teacher, you're putting in more time on top of all of the other duties. My first year at Seva as a full-time teacher was not sustainable. In order to support the students learning in math, I had to put in the time to build the relationship, because starting out that first year, they did not trust me. They didn't trust that teachers stay at Seva. There was comments coming up all the time. Teachers always leave, and they'd always ask me, are you going to leave? You're going to leave at the end of the year. It was common. My second year at Seva, I knew I couldn't be full-time. So I went down to a 0.5 teacher role because I wasn't physically or emotionally able to work time as a teacher.
Oh, you're breaking up, Donna.
5, that was when I was able to start the cross country and track and field teams. And that led to our school having a full sports program at the school. And we were able to be part of the local league. Oh, my internet's not stable. Okay. And this was huge for shifting the culture in the school and being able to develop relationships with the students.
Oh, you're breaking up again.
And in my class, and they knew, oh man, am I okay now?
You are now.
Okay. And so that's been something that's been a huge culture shift in the positive direction for our school. And then I just want to read a comment from a parent who is also an administrator in another district that came up this year. Said, I realized that Miss LaFever is not only coaching their athletic skills, but helping them through their social emotional needs too. In sharing this with my husband, we came to the conclusion that in sports, my student has the opportunity to work on making their body strong, and at the same time, they're working on making their mind stronger too. I feel so humbled by Miss LaFever's dedication, kindness, and deep emotional connections with students. It was so wonderful to see all the Spartans running and training with the same purpose. And then we need to think about how we treat the people and communicate with the people that are working in all of the student facing positions at SABA, and the ones, because those are the ones that require the most flexibility, the most compassion all the time. And during this year, the only direct communication that I had with my principal about my work was negative. One being an email reminder about the weekly newsletter in semester 1, and one being a formal reprimand stating that it was my responsibility to keep up with the engagement logs. Both are additional administrative tasks that got added to the teachers this year. So it was hard for me to advocate for myself and feel motivated to keep going after I received the reprimand from the principal. However, soon after that was when I received that email from the parent, and that helped me to feel appreciated, knowing that there was awareness of the amount of work it takes and validating the kind of work that I was doing. I had to build up the courage to send an email to my administrators at SABA expressing the kind of stress and anxiety and frustration that I had felt from receiving only negative feedback from the school leader, and then having continued conversations about the amount of time it takes to be a teacher and a coach within my schedule. If I was new to the teaching profession or worried about losing my job, worried I wouldn't be able to get another job if I lost this one, I would have kept quiet and try to follow and become overwhelmed and sucked into that stress. But then I've also, in conversations with other teachers, that stress is not just unique to me. And many people I've talked to or come to me because I've been at SABA for a long time, and because they know that I'll listen, and they're expressing the feeling of being overworked and overwhelmed. So I felt like it's really important to bring this attention to the board. And I feel like we really need to address the growing disconnect between the roles of the people that are doing the administrative tasks at school and the people that are doing this. We need to address the fact that teachers are extremely overworked as a whole, which is why teachers are looking for sustainability in the profession by seeking out part-time positions. And that means holding on to teachers that have been at SABA for a long time, but know that the work is beyond what's possible. They want to give their all, and it's too much. And so we're going to lose teachers if we aren't thinking about that. And then just in order to build a strong school community, we have to have a balance in the perspectives that are used when we make decisions at the school, because currently it's just coming from one perspective. So that's what I wanted to share. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Emily, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure if I understand the language of the policy. Are we saying no part-time, or are we saying no part-time teachers?
No part-time teachers.
So somebody who works half, they teach a class that only occurs every other day, and then they coach the other half of the time. We're saying that that's no longer a position.
Credentialed teachers need to be employed full-time.
As a teacher.
As a teacher.
Okay. I would be curious to kind of research if that is a practice common in other schools as well, because it's kind of been my understanding that it's fairly common, especially as you get veteran teachers, that they take on the role as a coach within a school, so they teach 0.5 time or 0.75 time. And then the remainder of their time when they're not employed in the classroom, they're helping new teachers, they're supporting. And in my experience, that's a really valuable thing at a school, to have coaches that are both veteran educators that are still in the classroom. That is what I had this year with Kate Emery. And I found that incredibly useful for me to have a coach who understood the challenges of distance learning. Like if she wasn't a teacher this year, she wouldn't have understood that. And I would hate to throw the baby out with the bathwater to say that if you're not teaching full time, you're not dedicated to the students.
Josh, you want to take that or you want me to?
Go ahead, Larry.
So I think we're talking about two separate things here. When you're staffing a school, you have what are called FTEs, full-time equivalent. A full-time job could be teaching half of the classes that a normal full-time teacher does, but as part of that assignment, you're getting 0.5 as a coach to coach other teachers.
Okay, that was my question. That was my question.
So that's a full-time job.
So we're still including that in SABA.
Well, I think we are, but I haven't talked to Josh.
Yeah, we are. So it's like, yes,
Okay,
that would have to be the point. We'd have to come up with a point system that's equitable for that. But yes, that is a possibility.
Okay, because that was one of my main concerns.
Sure.
Because part of that as well is that, like, I just want to kind of echo a little bit of what Donna was saying. Not to make this about me, but I'm 28. I'm in good health. I don't have family obligations. And I really like hard work. I think Josh can attest to that. And even with all that, I have felt overwhelmed at times by the relentless expectations of SABA. And something that makes that worthwhile, like that makes me able to handle that better, is the idea that SABA has always maintained flexibility based on merit. Like that's how we don't lose people. And I just want to be sure that policies really are in that spirit, if that makes sense. So that's basically what I wanted to say. Thank you.
You're welcome. Does anyone else want to add to the conversation? Any other comments? Hey, Nick, you want to just kind of, because you've been involved in charters for a really long time, and I don't know, is there anything you may want to add that might shed some light to our audience?
Yeah, thank you, Mary. Yeah, I think this is a really hard issue, and part of it is the fact that state law has become more and more constraining on what we can do as schools, whether we are at public charter schools or district public schools. So part of this policy, frankly, has been told to SABA, just like it's been told to all public schools, that you have to do this a certain way. I completely agree that with your comment, Emily, that that SABA and its mission thrives partly because of flexibility for accountability. And unfortunately, we've been given less and less flexibility as public charter schools over the years since charter school law was first enacted in 1992. In 1992 to about 2002, it was, you could almost do whatever you wanted. You didn't even need, in many cases, credentialed teachers. And I think in that case, they quite rightly changed the rule. But I do want to put that into that perspective. This is not something that SABA is doing on its own. This is something that we are being forced to conform to. There's also a best practice aspect to it that has been spoken to already by a couple of people here. The equity aspect, I think, is real, but it also comes with the constraints. This policy also comes with the constraints that state law has given SABA, like a lot of other schools.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have any other comments before it is put to a vote?
Just in terms of the equity issue, I do think that as administrators, we should be exploring why we're seeing so many SABA teachers work far beyond the hours. I mean, they're trying to bring it to this idea of equity, but like all of those teachers are working tirelessly and not getting paid for it. And we should find how we can make sure that that's not happening. Like the fact that it's coming to light how much teachers have to work in beyond the workday seems like a reason to try and look at how many tasks you're asking of, how much you're asking of teachers. I think it's going way beyond, and you're just going to lose the veteran teachers that are establishing a strong culture at the school when you set these hard lines where there's no wiggle room for teachers trying to be able to just create a sustainable life for themselves. So I think that's a different way to think about equity.
That is if I could just respond briefly,
Sure.
that is absolutely a good angle on equity as well. I would say that it is absolutely true that teachers at SABA, as well as at many, if not most public schools, are having to work this year way more than even before. And already we know that the teaching profession is underpaid. And so this year is a very challenging year for a lot of different reasons, but especially the pandemic has forced teachers and administrators and support staff to do things that we never thought we would ever be asked to do. And that's not, that's just an observation that everybody knows is true, but it is it's something I didn't want to lose sight of, because we know how hard teachers at all schools are being forced to work this year on 2 programs. And that's, I think, addressed in the previous motion that was passed by the board to try to address some of it with additional pay for doing extra work this year.
And again, working for a school district and being on the board for many years at another school district, I'm going to echo Nick's comments. You're not paid well for the profession you do. You're not, and it's unfortunate. And that's a bigger conversation than the conversation here, because that should be a priority, and it currently is not. And also to the fact that I see how these teachers work, especially this year with everything that has gone on and the pandemic and the new paradigm shift from in-person to remote and all that entailed. It's a lot. Most definitely is a lot.
Even in normal years, teachers who work in schools like SABA work harder. I mean, it's a given. You put in lots of hours. If you care about the kids, you put in the hours, and you don't get paid as much as you should. It's just the truth.
It is. I can tell you myself, I work 60 hours a week.
Yeah.
I don't get paid for 60 hours. I don't. Would I like to? Of course, right? We all would, but that's not really the case. Any other comments before we put this to a vote?
Sorry, I'm new to this, so I'm not really sure how much of it is.
No,
like
please.
discussion.
I don't have a problem with this. So.
Okay, I was just kind of curious, especially with those of you who have worked extensively in other school districts, like, is like a part-time teaching position like not a thing at other schools, or?
It's absolutely a thing, but in most comprehensive high schools, most school districts have collective bargaining agreements that deal directly with those issues. And the part-time teachers, and it's really common to have part-time teachers, but they're paid on a percentage of a full-time salary, not on an hourly basis. That's where the disconnect happens. If you're teaching half-time at a regular school, you get half of the salary that you get half the salary that you would get on a salary schedule if you were teaching full-time. If you're teaching 80%, you get 80%. So the formulas are clean, they're easy to figure out, they're straightforward. But if you're paying part-time teachers on an hourly basis, that's where it gets really screwed up. That's where it gets really difficult to quantify the quality of work. Somebody who's working full-time, who's working 60 hours a week, somebody who's working part-time who ends up working 60 hours a week. Is that fair?
Lawrence, this is Katrina. What is preventing SEBA from moving to that type of scenario that you're talking about, like being a 60% salaried employee rather than being an hourly employee?
I think it's the law. I think that's, but Josh or Nick, you need to take that one.
Yeah, my understanding is, I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding from the lawyers is that because charter schools are run by nonprofits as opposed to government agencies, we are a hybrid and we are governed in this case, because we're nonprofits, by nonprofit law, both federal and state. That is the key constraint that districts don't have that we have as charter public schools.
But in a really concrete manner.
So, hold on, Josh. Josh was just getting ready to start, so give him 1 minute and then you can take it.
In a
Okay,
really
Josh.
concrete way, what this ends up being is there's a minimum salary that 501c3 public charters must pay. And that minimum salary is around $60,000 per year. It's like 58 or something. It goes up a little bit each year. And so that is beyond, you know, if somebody were to go 0.5 and times that by 2, that's beyond what a full-time position would pay. And so you end up with some unusual math there.
Okay, and then what was the, Katrina, you were getting ready to say something, so I want to give you the floor.
Yeah, I think that answers I think
Okay.
he just answered my next question.
Okay, great, thank you.
I think I was gonna, from a master scheduling point of view, it's sometimes nice to have a few part-time people on the staff so that you're not overstaffing. Sometimes it actually works very conveniently to have some people that are 0.2s and 0.4s available.
That's a trade-off. You're right, Katrina, and I think it's just balancing that detriment versus everything else that we talked about here. But you're right.
Can I just
Emily.
clarify? So at a non-charter school, you're able to maintain part-time teachers because you can pay them a percentage of their salary, going down to half-time.
Correct.
And at a charter school, you cannot do that because there is a minimum salary requirement.
And I want to be clear here, that is the thrust of why we're having this conversation. And there is more components to that than just that, but that is the main reason behind this policy.
Okay. Would that still apply when you start getting up to like 0.75 time, 0.8 time? Could you like hit those minimum salary requirements and still allow someone to not be working full-time?
Potentially, honestly, I mean, we're going to get to this in a moment, but like it would depend on the teacher's experience and where they're at on the salary schedule. So a 35-year veteran teacher that wants to do this, maybe they're up close to that, but you still got to think, if you were 0.5 and the minimum 60, that would mean they need to be at 120 on a full-time schedule, which we'll talk about in a little bit here, which probably would not be realistic.
Yeah.
Because we couldn't pay a full-time teacher 120.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. I just keep coming back to like, I understand that you all are voting on this in a second, and I just keep coming back to, I worry about policies that don't build in flexibility for like potentially really qualified teachers who are unable to work full time for whatever reason. So, yeah.
No, I think you're right. I worry about that too. So I don't know, maybe the law just needs to change. I mean, we're in a position where it's untenable. If we have to follow the law like that, I don't know how we can. Short of going, requiring full-time from everybody.
There is, just want to point out that there is a little bit of flexibility built into this policy for temporary or substitute teachers, but that is, I think, the only flexibility that we're allowed.
Well, there's also flexibility in terms of what's defined as teaching, right? Because earlier I was talking about somebody who's a half-time teacher and a half-time coach, and that qualifies as full-time teaching, right?
Mm-hmm.
So are we free to define teaching?
So I would be hesitant to define like somebody having a 0.5 coaching position. Typical, you'd have a full-time teaching position if there was, if somebody has that, and then they decide, I want to go coach the basketball team. Then they would sign up for that. Maybe there's a stipend at the school.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Stipend.
I'm talking about coaching teachers.
Oh, coaching teachers. Yeah, so coach, that's still allowed. So if they'd have to be 0.5 coach and, and then 0.5 teacher.
So in terms of those other tasks that don't involve like teacher in front of the room, talking at students, like can we in this policy like write in some flexibility into what like qualifies as teaching?
I would say that's already included by talking about operational needs.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
And in normal districts, it's called teachers on special assignment. So it's a teaching load, but it's an assignment outside of the classroom.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions or comments? Because we are going to move forward with a motion on this. Do we have a motion to approve?
Sure, I'll move.
And do we have a second?
One second.
Okay, roll call. Larry, how do you vote?
Aye.
Gershom, how do you vote?
Aye.
And I vote aye. The motion passes. We now move on to the SABA admin salary schedule. Josh?
So we're trying to build transparency into our organization. We have a salary schedules for every position in the organization. Here, we're looking at an administrator salary schedule that includes myself, the head of school, along with senior level administrators. Senior level administrators are defined at the bottom of the schedule, including directors of talent management, digital learning, operations, and multi-tiered systems and support, student services, student and parent engagement. SABA may add or remove senior level administrators as needed. But basically, as administrators, senior level administrators come on to SABA, they will go into this salary schedule based on their year's experience as an administrator, and then they fall into that step schedule.
And Josh, when you look at the steps, those steps are relative to years, correct?
That is correct.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions? Larry, Gershom?
No.
No. If there's no questions, can I get a motion and a second, please?
A motion.
I'll second.
Larry, how do you vote?
Aye.
Gershom?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Motion passes. We move on now to the counselor salary schedule, for 21-22.
Okay, so
Josh, you want to?
Sure. This is a counselor salary schedule, and again, you see that a similar pattern here. We have years experience, a step with the salary associated with that. The calendar days are 211, so that's 211 work days. And then there's a series of stipends that counselors are available to earn should they choose to do that. This include bilingual tech stipend, teacher tech stipend, athletic director, coach, DEI coordinator, summer credit recovery, and then educational stipends.
Any questions? Nope, seeing none. Gershom, how do you, oh, sorry, do I get a motion? I forgot about that part. A motion and a second, please.
I'll move.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, Gershom, how do you vote?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Motion passes. So now we will move on to the classified pay salary.
Classified pay salary schedule is different. It is an hourly position rather than salaried. And so what we have here are all of the classified positions available at SEBA. We have a minimum and maximum hourly rate. We put a range there to accommodate for different attributes that somebody might have. Maybe they're bilingual, maybe they have different, experience levels or expertise in the area. And so they will fall into somewhere between this minimum and maximum hourly rate.
Any questions? Just as I was looking at this again, Josh, my first thought was, do we put down on our salary schedules, because I didn't see it now, and knowing the salary schedules that I see, we don't put holidays on there so that the staff knows when there are holidays. That's just part of the calendar versus the salary schedule. Is that correct? Would that be fair to say?
That is fair to say. We will have a calendar for counselors, classified, and senior level admin that'll go along with this.
Okay.
And then I would say the days too I put this on there because that's what the calendar is going to look like, but there's going to be flexibility there. Like as an hourly, okay, I'm not working this week. Okay, that's fine. Adjust your pay rate accordingly. So.
Okay.
The holidays will also be listed in the employee handbook, right, Josh?
Yes. They will
Okay.
be listed in the employee handbook.
Okay. Can I get a motion in a second, please?
I'll motion it.
I'll
Thank you,
second.
Gershom. Thank you. Gershom, how do you vote?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
And I as well. Motion passes. Now we are on to the stipends and the definitions. I thought that was very helpful, that this one, Josh. So take it away.
So we have stipends for various efforts or to incentivize actions that we want to see happening at SEBA. And so just to go through some of the stipends that we are going to have available for the upcoming school year: academic intervention or FAST 40, bilingual, if you can host ILPs or parent conferences in English or Spanish, teacher lead, AD, interscholastic coach, AP teaching, intercession enrichment, and then educational stipends and tech stipends. But the stipends that appear on the different salary schedules may lead somebody to say, well, how do I earn that? And then we can refer to these definitions as appropriate.
I think I'm going to steal that from you and try and incorporate it somehow where I'm working.
Okay.
Because we don't have definitions, and I've always asked, there should be definitions and what's expected. So I really like that. I had a question. So are stipends designated at the beginning of the year, or is it, and it could be that it's just relative to a timing during the year? And if it's designated during a specific time of the year, is it prorated? I'm not sure how all that works.
Stipends, for as many of these as we can, will, like, for example, if you're bilingual and you qualify, then we'll have that from the start. Academic intervention or FAST 40, those can be periodic throughout the year. The one item I learned, I'm sure you probably already know this, is once somebody signs up for a stipend, if it's included in their bi-monthly pay, that will go towards their CalSTRS, whereas if it's paid out in one lump sum, there's other rules that, so I was learning about
Yeah,
this.
there is rules on that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay. But in terms of when to start and stop, we have people joining or leaving teacher leadership or many of these throughout the year, and we're able to accommodate that. I mean,
Okay.
even AD or coaches, that'll happen as well.
Okay. And then one question that I had, I wasn't sure of, and I just wanted clarification. Where is it? At the very bottom, the tech stipend. What was my question? I have to pull it up again. Staff is directed to telework rather than work on site will receive a stipend of $25 per pay period. So can you give me like a scenario where that would apply? Because I wasn't coming
You're
up with
gonna
one.
laugh at this, Mary. So yeah, it's when we have to work from home should a COVID pandemic come.
Oh,
And
so that really was instituted because of the COVID.
yes. Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
And when you say per pay period, is that
twice, so it'll be $50 a month.
twice a month? Your
Bi-weekly,
pay period.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And Mary, if you do end up using these and you share it with our county group, we just ask that you give Saba the credit.
Oh, absolutely. I'll put a little, like school services and all the other ones do that.
Yep.
Absolutely.
A little watermark or a
Absolutely.
little footer.
Absolutely. Any other questions for us on the stipends and their definitions, or if board members? Nope. Great.
I would just comment that this policy, along with the previous policies, bringing it back to the question of full-time teaching, I think, Mary, you made the comment that many of these stipends count towards STIRS. So, really the definition of teachers is, are they in STIRS, right? And so whether you're coaching or you are teaching full-time in the classroom, or a combination of the two, or if you're also earning a stipend that is STIRS eligible, all of those pieces contribute to the
Count to
school
your retirement.
as yes, they contribute to your salary too, or your take-home pay, but they also all are classified as part of being a teacher classification, meaning a STIRS eligible employee. So that is one definition of a teacher, whether you are 0.7 in the classroom and 0.3 as a coach, and then also doing stipended work as well, or whether you are just 1.0 in the classroom. So I don't know if that helps, the earlier conversation, but this was very helpful for me as well in thinking about, what a teacher does. Some administrators are former teachers and they're still in STIRS, and that's also another definition of teacher.
Great.
Well, I had to explain this to both my kids. One of them's a special ed teacher in his first year, and the other was a counselor in her third year. They don't fully understand when you talk about STIRS and you talk about these things, they don't quite get it, that it impacts what they get when they retire 30 some odd years down the road. So that's what we're talking about here. The more you contribute your regular salary under STIRS, the more you're going to make after you retire.
And you make it till the day you die. It's like great.
And sometimes longer if you set it up to continue paying your spouse.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, absolutely. Any questions or comments on this before we vote?
I'm a fan. Especially the definition of fast 40 stipends. I think that's going to go a long way towards equaling the playing field with teacher workload.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion and a second.
I move.
And Larry, how do you vote?
Aye.
Gershom?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Motion passes. On to the ESSER 2 assurances. And who's up for that? That's you, Daniel.
I'll take it. So this is just a document proving that Saba accepted the assurances, limiting Saba towards the uses and the guidelines for how we use it, report it. DMS filed this assurances doc for us. We just wanted to bring it forward to formalize with the board.
And I see that all the time. Yeah, so very standard operating procedure. Any questions? Seeing none, can I get a motion and a second, please?
Motion.
A second.
And how do you vote, Gershom?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Motion passes. Now we're on to the remodeling piece, the repair and renovation. And that's for you, Josh.
Excellent. So SEBA finished our construction for the water intrusion issue in classrooms in November of this past year. And so our building remains dry, except for the space around our storefront windows, which runs along the hallway by the teacher lounge and then the teacher lounge itself. And so we had some rainstorms come through in January that were light to medium, definitely not, worse than we've ever seen. And we still saw water continue to come through and wet the carpet tiles in that area. And so what this building repair and remodel is asking to do is it's asking you 3 things really. The first thing is this: go in and rebuild out a curb that will prevent water intrusion around the perimeter of the building where there are storefront windows, and we're going to follow the same pattern that we followed with the infills that we did for the school construction project between July and November. Those worked really well. We went in and were able to check during those rainstorms in January, and there wasn't a drop of water and didn't even register on the moisture meters. So we're really happy with how that came out, and we want to just continue that pattern so that the entire perimeter of the building is dry, and we won't be having to deal with rain and pulling out fans and all the rest. So that's part 1 of this proposal. Part 2, because of the water intrusion from previous years, the carpet tile was pulled out of the staff teacher lounge along with drywall. And then we've had issues with our sink and cabinetry in that area. So part 2 of this is to remodel the teacher lounge to include new drywall, new cabinets, a new functional sink, and more space for additional microwaves, etc. So that is part 2 of this. And then part 3 is there's an office directly adjacent to that teacher lounge that we would like to convert to a lactation room. And so the reason we chose to put this there is there's already plumbing to the teacher lounge. And so it's a lot easier to put a sink on that other side in that office. And we would also put in a set of cabinets there with a refrigerator. And then that room would become the lactation room for staff members. I do want to clarify that this is able to be funded under ESSER 2. And so I included in the attachments what ESSER 2 can fund and highlighted school facility repairs and improvements to reduce risk of virus transmission and projects to improve the air quality, including HVAC filtering, purification fans, control systems, and windows and door repair and replacement. So much of what we're doing here will be covered under ESSER 2.
So we have that funding source, which is good. Do we have any questions? So just out of curiosity, and I probably know the answer, but I just want to hear it. So why doesn't the landlord take care of this stuff and pay for it since we're leasing the building?
That is a great question, because he has indicated that he does not want to pay for it, and we have not the issue. Daniel,
So
do you
then-
want to say anything more than that? I mean, this is
Yeah, I think really that's the gist of it.
That's the gist of it. I wonder if there's some price reduction somewhere that we can, I'm always looking to save a dime somewhere. So that's 1. 2, do we have to go out to bid? Because it's over the threshold, so we don't have to go out to bid. Okay. Those are my questions. Okay. Any questions from the audience? Okay, seeing none, do I get a motion in a second, please?
I'll move.
Thank you. Larry, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Gershon? And myself, aye. Motion passes. We now move on to the financial activity through February 2021.
Okay, I'll try to keep it short. So SEBA is still projected to end the year with a cash balance of a little over 2.8 million, roughly 40% of annual expenditures. The expenses are tracking just under budget. Our revenues are at 50% of our total revenues, which is still lagging behind where we are in the calendar, but that's one, that's typical, and two, we are in a year with deferrals. So once the deferrals start to come in, our budget will be looking a little better than it already is, even though right now it's still looking pretty good. We're still projected to end the year with a surplus of $774 in ending fund balance, with an ending fund balance of 5.04 million. As we discussed, we discussed the ESSER funds that have come in. There's also an ESSER 3 that's come in, as well as 2 one-time grants from the state. So one of them is the in-person learning grants, as well as the extended learning grant. These grants will fund at 50% in May and 50% next year in August. The extended learning opportunity grant is for implementing various strategies to accelerate learning and address student needs. 85% of it will be used for in-person services, and at least 10% must be used to employ paraprofessionals. In addition to the state money, the American Recovery Plan, signed into law earlier this month, provides the third round of the ESSER funds. In total, SEBA is slated to receive nearly $3.5 million in one-time funding to be used over the next 3 years. DMS will be working with us to ensure compliance and accountability of all these funds. A summary of all this activity of one-time funds from the state and federal governments is at the 10th and 11th page of the attached monthly update. And other than that, SEBA's continuing to work on the updated budget for next year, with the noted project that we just talked about. It will be funded with ESSER 2 over the next month or so. We plan to come up with a summary of how we're using all those funds. But page 10 and 11 do discuss where we start to see some of those funds come in and how more or less how we plan to use them.
And you have to come up with a plan, right? That has to be brought to the board of how you plan to spend the monies.
Yes. So I believe for the state grants, right, we have until May. So next month we will be coming up with, we will be presenting the board with our plan. Otherwise, as I had mentioned, we're looking good from a budget perspective. And if anybody has any questions on any of the other detail pages, please feel free to ask.
Yeah, I think just to add to your comments, Daniel, I think the first part of the AB 86 state funds, we just approved a policy to qualify for those. That's the COVID prevention plan that we just passed. And that's for the come back early, which you just voted to do. The second part is given to everybody, but if you don't write a plan, then they'll claw it back. So
yeah. So
not too hard, but that's what we have to do in order to keep the money.
Yeah. So we saw these funds coming up as early as January, and that was when the governor rolled out his budget, and that's why we scrambled and made our February board meeting instead in late January, so we can get the COVID prevention plan approved by the board, and then get it to the county like early, like I think it was February 4th or something like that, Josh. But we did see it come in. We wanted to get in front of it, so today we made updates to that one that we submitted in February for the COVID prevention plan. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah. The only question I had, Daniel, is I'm still not sure, and probably smarter people on this call than me may know that when ESSER 3 funds are expected to be distributed. My understanding is the earliest would be towards the very end of this school year, because they've just been approved, as you said, as part of that $1.9 trillion plan. Anybody?
Yeah, I don't.
All right,
I
what was
don't
your
know for
question?
sure.
When they're going to be released?
When
ESER
ESER 3 will be available
Oh.
to schools. Yeah, I haven't heard anything yet. I would
I
imagine
haven't,
the
I
beginning
haven't
of
heard
next school
anything
year.
either. I
I think
haven't heard anything, and they don't even have a resource code for it yet.
no, they don't, but they do have an amount, and the amount's quite extraordinary. It's upwards of $2,300, anywhere between $2,300 and $2,800 per pupil.
Mhm.
So it's big.
Yeah.
I think it may be the biggest.
Mhm.
Certainly.
Do we have any questions? I love the summary. Keep that narrative summary going. I just love that piece. I think that's great.
Got to thank Valerie for it.
Mhm. So do we have any questions? Seeing none, can I get a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Second.
And Gershom, how do you vote?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Motion passes. Now we go on to the document retention and destruction policy.
Okay, so today I'm bringing to the board a policy that would direct SABA to use guidelines set forth by the California business officials for the records retention manual. This came out because we annually SABA files the Form 990, and Clifton Larson Allen, our auditor, came back and said that they would like to see what our official policy is on written document record retention and destruction. And so we are formalizing our policy by adopting the CASBO records retention manual.
Okay, very straightforward. We use it as well. So.
Okay.
Mhm. Any questions? If there's no questions, can I get a motion in a second, please?
Did you just move, Gershon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The second?
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. How do you vote, Gershom?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
And I as well. Motion passes. So now we move on to the board calendar of dates. Josh.
Yes, so this board calendar of dates continues with our current pattern of meeting dates, the first Tuesday of each month. It takes us through December of this school year. So it goes up to December 7th, 2021.
Mhm.
And we always know we have that tight turnaround from Thanksgiving and then into December, so that gives us a good week there to submit our first interim budget report and get the audit approval. The audit approval is what can be a holdup sometimes. This year, I think we had to move our board meeting because it was on December 1st or 2nd. So I am asking the board to approve the updated list of meeting dates through December 7th, 2021.
Yeah, and I just wanted to note that there are 2 board meetings in June, and that's so that we can have the hearing for the LCAP, and then have the meeting on the 15th for which we can bring forward the budget and the approval of the LCAP itself.
Which is required, so yeah.
Yes.
I just want to make a comment where it says, end of calendars, at the end of the calendar, it states meetings to be held at SABA unless otherwise noticed. So are you planning on opening for board meetings now? Or is that, is there any?
No, the plan is to continue on Zoom. We are not
Okay.
legally allowed to have in-person meetings. That's a big
Bummer.
Yeah, so we're going to continue on Zoom.
Okay.
So I guess I'm otherwise noticing you right now that these meetings will continue on Zoom.
Okay.
Something else.
That means we'll have to do a written otherwise notice to the other 2 board members.
That's it. Any questions? Seeing none, can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
And a second. Larry, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Gershom?
Aye.
And I as well, motion passes. So now we are on to the underwriter piece, KCA's analysis. You want to do the introduction, Josh?
Yeah, absolutely. So SEBA is potentially going to issue bonds for the purchase of our facility. And we are working with Carl Yoder from Key Charter Advisors to facilitate this process. And so he is here this evening to talk about his analysis of, on this agenda item, the underwriters who were potential candidates to support SEBA in this process and who he believes is best suited to meet SEBA's needs in issuing the bonds. Carl?
Yeah, thank you, Josh. So the bond underwriter is the firm that markets the bonds that we're putting together, that markets the bonds to investors. So these are Wall Street firms that regularly engage in taking municipal bond issues and selling them usually to institutional investors. Mutual bond funds are the typical largest investors in bonds like these, but there's also what's called a retail interest, meaning high net worth individuals. What we did is we put the RFP out to 3 different firms. All 3 of these firms have experience in marketing California charter school bonds. The first one's Stifel Nicolaus, the second one is Truist Securities, and the third one is Baird. All 3, as I mentioned, are experienced. Baird said they were too busy, they weren't going to put in a bid, but the 2 that I felt were the top 2 candidates were Stifel and Truist, both submitted bids. I have included a more detailed analysis, including a copy of each proposal from each of the 2 firms. But breaking it down and summarizing it, what it really ends up with is Truist does more bonds nationwide, but Stifel does more bonds and has more experience with California charter schools, which tend to be a pretty specialized market. Investors in California bonds, because California taxes have their own special situation. Investors in California bonds tend to just focus on California bonds. So for that reason, I think Stifel's additional experience with California charter school bonds is going to cause them to get a lower overall interest rate on the bonds. Their upfront fee is a little higher, but I'm really looking at the total cost to the school, taking their fee and the interest rate that you're able to get on the long-term bonds and looking at the overall blended cost to the school. I do feel Stifel will be a little less expensive. They also have the advantage, they work with Elizabeth Sanborn before. I don't think that's the primary criteria, but as both firms are highly qualified, every little bit makes a difference. So long story short, I think that Stifel gets the edge and I would recommend them as the underwriter, but that is of course subject to board approval. And Josh or Daniel, if you have any additional input or thoughts on that.
I was able to meet these underwriters over Zoom last week. We have another meeting set up for this week, and I was impressed by the thoroughness. I asked a lot of really basic questions about what happens if things go south, and they were able to provide very concrete answers as to what happens. And I was impressed with their detailed answers and also their experience having done this multiple times for charter schools.
I know the Stifel folks as well, and they're excellent by reputation, and as well as their main bankers, Guillermo Garcia and John Kim. So I definitely think it's the right way to go as well.
Do we have any other comments or questions?
No, I just wanted to note, Carl mentioned Elizabeth Sanborn, just for everybody on the call. Elizabeth Sanborn is working with SEBA as a real estate consultant.
Thank you, Dan.
And any board questions? I'm good. So
I am too.
So if there's no questions, can I get a motion in a second, please, to approve Stifel Nicolaus? Is that how you say it?
Stifel Nicolaus.
Stifel, excuse me. So who did that one? I didn't hear that.
I did.
Thank you, Larry. Larry, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Gershom?
Aye.
And I as well. So it passes. Thank you.
Great,
And
thank you.
And you're on, I think, Carl, for the bond council as well. So
Great. So the bond council is a law firm that focuses on, their role is to put together the bond issue. So their specialization is the bond documents, making sure all the bond documents are correct, that they they qualify for tax exemption, that it has a valid tax exempt opinion, basically that all of the T's have been crossed and the I's dotted for the structure of the bond issue. The school also has your own counsel, Sarah Coleman from YMC. That's the attorney representing the school. We call that the school's counsel or borrower's counsel. So bond counsel has the role of making sure that all the bond documents are correct. I'm just pointing that out to make sure you're clear. The choice for bond counsel is in no way replacing YMC as your counsel. All of the firms here, and I have experience working with Sarah Coleman. She does a great job on bond transactions like this, and you're in good hands with YMC as your counsel. For bond counsel, we sent it out to 3 firms. I've worked with all 3 extensively. They all do very good work. You couldn't go wrong with any of them. But as the Orrick Herrington, it has an edge. They have a greater history of sort of innovative transactions, more transactions overall. And their fee is the same as Stradling Yoka. Kutak is also good, but their fee was $10,000 higher. So again, across 3 highly qualified firms, given that Orrick has a slight edge in experience, I'd recommend Orrick for this transaction. But as with the bond underwriter, I'm happy to answer any questions or go into more detail about this as the board or Josh would like.
I was also able
ahead.
to meet with the council, and I likewise was impressed with their thoroughness and their experience. And I have no concerns after meeting with them for over an hour last Thursday.
You're an expert now, right, Josh?
No.
Do we have any other comments or questions? So I just really quick, Cara. So when we have bond counsel, do they stay with us for the life of selling the bonds? Is it a 3-year term period? Which is what
it
I've
is.
been-
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. The fees for both bond counsel and underwriter are fully contingent on the financing being successfully closed, and their fees are paid out of the bond issue at closing. There isn't usually a specific term for bond counsel, how long they're around. But I've been working with these firms, for 20 years. So if something happens 10 years from now and you call up the firm saying, hey, can you help with this? The industry standard is they would help you through whatever that issue is in terms of their role with the bonds. Like if you had to pay them off or refinance them or change something, the understanding is that it's for the life of the issue. We can put that into greater detail in the engagement letter and spell that out more clearly. But my experience has been they'll be with you as long as you would like them to be in relation to the bond issue.
Okay, great. Any questions? Board members, any questions? Audience, any questions? Okay, seeing none, can I get a motion and a second to approve Orrick Herrington, please?
I'll move.
And a second. How do you vote, Gershom?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
And I myself, motion passes. Thank you for being here and walking us through that piece.
Of course, thank you.
Thanks, Carl.
So now we move on to reports, and we're at the operations report.
Oh, it's me already. Okay. I'm going to share my screen here really quick. And I'm going to have a quick presentation about our enrollment, our lottery and enrollment process for next year. Here we go. Okay, so just wanted to note the timeline that we have for our upcoming lottery. First, our applications have been available since I think about October, November, Josh, is when we revealed we released our applications. The window closes Friday, April 23rd. a key part of all of this is getting our recommitment forms to our current families. We haven't decided a date for when that will be due, but that will determine the number of seats we estimate that we'll have available. The lottery night itself is Thursday, May 6th. Acceptance letters will be sent to families the day after, and upon sending out the acceptance letters, we'll be inviting families to come in. That's in number 6, inviting them to come in for one-on-one meetings with our registrar and parent engagement coordinator. Those letters will be due May 21st, and then student orientation we anticipate to happen in July. An update on our applications so far. We have 2 sections for the 6th grade. One, 6th grade students from the general population. So far we have 41. And then the second section of 6th grade is for students with preference, meaning siblings, staff members, students. And then for 7th grade, 13. Oh, sorry, we have 25 for those students with preference, 13 in 7th grade, 8 in 9 and 8th grade, 21 in 9th grade, 3 at 10th grade, 3 at 11th grade, and 1 in the 12th grade. So far we have 116 applications. I will note that we're still doing recruiting flyering. That's still happening during this break. We anticipate having some more applications coming in this and next week. So on to current enrollment. Our current enrollment is at 532. Middle school has 254 students. High school has 278 students. And I note that there are 63 12th grade because those are the seats that we expect to open up to help us understand how many seats we have available. So takes me to our projected enrollment. This is always tricky. This isn't always really hard to drill down the attrition piece, but the first row right here, I have our current enrollment by grade: 75 in the 6th grade, 90 in the 7th grade, 89 in the 8th grade, 81 in 9th grade, 66 in 10th, 68 in 11th, and 63 in 12th. And I italicize that because that's the group that we will potentially be losing. Total is 532 again. So then that second row, I added a projected attrition. And if you follow, so right here we have 75 6th grade, and it doesn't necessarily go straight down. There's a 0 projected attrition for 6th grade because it kind of moves over into a new, like moves diagonally. So,
Cohort.
Yep. So 75 this year, we expect maybe lose 2 next year, bringing us to 73, and you could follow that trend. Whoops. Along each line. So here it's a little tricky because typically we see a lot more 8th graders leave to go to a traditional high school, and I put -5. It's kind of a toss-up just because last year we anticipated around 10, which is closer to what it normally is, but last year, as you'll see on the next slide that I have, you'll see the actual attrition that we had last year, which was not much. So conservatively, I projected around 15 for the year, and that's just 2 at every grade level, 5 from 8th to 9th, which gets us these numbers for students that are coming back. So 73 in the 7th grade, 88 in 8th, 84 in 9th, 79 in 10th, 64 in 11th. Interesting note about that group of next year's 11th graders, this year's 10th graders, as an 8th grade cohort, they were at 81. So that kind of tells the story of the attrition that we typically see. Next year, 12th grade, 66, getting us to our 525. So again, the final number that we choose right here, it says 71 seats for 6th grade for next year. That's ultimately determined by the recommitment forms that we see come back. Update on historical attrition. So this is 2018, 2019 from that year to 1920. This is more along our typical attrition. So from 6th to 7th, we lost 2. 7th to 8th 0, and right here is where we saw our what's close to our normal attrition from 8th to 9th grade. We lost 13 kids that year, from 8th to 9th, and then 1 in the 10th, and then 6 in the 11th. That's a total of 22. Last year was very different. We lost only eight students, and that's in the high school. That 8th to 9th grade transition was almost non-existent compared to what's normal for us. So that's what makes things a little tricky for us for projecting for our lottery. But we hope to have updates after our lottery. So that's all I have for tonight. If anybody has any particular questions, I'm happy to answer.
So, yeah, I have a question, just some kind of questions and comments. So I know at PCS, they require like a parent meeting so the parents know and kids know what is going to be expected as they come into the school. Does SABA do anything like that?
Yes. We have
Okay.
meetings periodically throughout the year, usually.
Okay. And that's a requirement.
Yes, it's I don't think we're allowed to call it a requirement, but we highly encourage everyone to attend that meeting prior to filling out the application.
Right. Okay. And then, so right now you're looking for like 70 some odd kids. Well, I was going to ask about a waiting list, but we don't have a waiting list, right? Until we know what we have. But you always have more than the required number of seats, 8. That's why you have the lottery. So, okay. And then I know other districts, a lot of districts across the state, and Daniel, you probably heard this when we were sitting in our meetings, our CBO meetings, how enrollment has taken a dive at many, many schools, but SABA doesn't see that enrollment decline, have they?
No, I wouldn't say that we have necessarily. And from what I remember from our meetings that we had with other county CBOs is a lot of it so far has been at the younger grade level. That might come to impact SABA. Yeah, that might come to impact SABA in the coming years. So, and that doesn't.
That's right.
That doesn't take into account any other changes that could come with enrollment in the future. And I also wanted to note that we still continue our flyering efforts for applications because it is also a covenant with our bank loan with Santa Cruz County Bank.
Okay. And then just attrition, I'm glad you addressed the historic because I was going to ask on that. So you generally see attrition at the 8th, 9th transition. You don't see a lot at the 10, 11, 12?
We see a little bit, but
no.
Nothing as substantial as the 8th to 9th grade transition.
Yeah, interesting. Any questions? Any other questions? Any audience questions? Thank you, Emily, for always shaking your head so I know I can move on.
I'm particularly stoked that there wasn't a whole lot of kids that left with that 8th grade cohort because they're near and dear to my heart. So with that particular group, I'm glad there was so little turnover with them leaving for school.
That's great.
Agreed.
Any questions, other questions, board member questions? And if not, can I get a motion to approve, please?
I think this is just a report, so there's no motion needed.
Oh, you're right. Okay, I take that back. Moving on, we are on to head of school report.
Thank you, Mary. So I wanted to invite Elizabeth Sanborn on for a facility purchase update. Things are moving along swiftly. I'm going to give my first part, and then I'm going to hand it over to Elizabeth. So at our previous meeting, the SABA Board of Directors approved the formation of SABA Spartan LLC to be the vehicle to purchase our facility. We did file those papers with the Secretary of State. We did receive those back. We were also fortunate enough to have longtime partner Dina Hoffman agree to be the board officer president. And so we have filed amendments to those articles saying that she will be the president and the wonderful thing about that is she is independent of SEBA and not a SEBA employee. And that was what we were looking for. So that is complete. And so that organization is formed once we are ready to eventually move on with the purchase. Elizabeth and I have been speaking regularly, and I'm going to hand it over to Elizabeth to share out a little bit more about the sale and purchase agreement and where we're at with that.
Okay. So after our last board meeting, I went back and hammered, to the extent that I could on the 7.5, and frankly, they didn't seem to be interested in moving forward. So I finally made an executive decision and after talking with Josh, to tell them that we would live with it. So that's where we are with the price. And I've been working with Sarah, Josh and I have been working with Sarah Coleman over at Young Mini to put together a purchase contract. And there were a number of things that we had to clarify in the agreement that are sort of non-standard, the most significant of which is not a significant issue really, but we have to prepare a lot line adjustment because the area that SEBA is leasing doesn't exactly match the lot lines of the property that there are currently 2 lots. And the area SEBA's leasing doesn't exactly match the lot lines. So we had to provide for that, and it gets a little bit complicated. But that's the only real complication in the purchase agreement. And we finally have the draft down to a point where I felt that I could submit it to them. There are a few more things that need to be resolved. For example, the ownership entity we were a little uncertain as to what the ownership entity would be. And I think we have that cleared up now. So I submitted that to them on Friday. They have to submit it to their attorney, and I expect to have comments back from them probably sometime in the next day or 2. So that's kind of where we are on that. Am I being too succinct, Josh, or do I need to give you more detail, or anybody have any questions or thoughts?
Maybe you want to share out about the easement before we go to comments?
Oh, okay. That's currently the driveway that services the 270 West Riverside property is on the 260 property. And in the lease for the 260 property.
Can I interject here really fast? Just
pardon me?
If you don't mind, Elizabeth, we call the driveway the entrance from Locust, and you're calling the driveway is the entrance from Riverside to go.
Okay, I'll call it the Riverside entrance. Okay. So the Riverside entrance is currently on the legal lot of record that SEBA will be purchasing. And we don't want to have that situation because we want to avoid the liability of the trucks coming in and out of a property that we own. So we're going to move that. Am I saying it?
Yeah, no, you're saying it perfectly right.
We're going to move the 270 driveway over to the 270 lot of record. Now, there are 9 parking places in the lease that in that driveway area that are for use by SEBA and designated for use by SEBA in the lease. When we buy the property and we do the lot line adjustment, we still have to provide for an easement in perpetuity for SEBA to use those 9 parking places. Also for the vehicle access to come in, the fire truck access, and the pedestrian access into the new SEBA site. So that we need to provide for, and getting that in writing was a little bit difficult. So we now have that all down into the written purchase agreement. And I spoke to the civil engineer this morning, and Josh, I haven't spoken with you since I had that conversation. And I'm very clear on the process that we're going to need to go through to get this done. Where in the purchase agreement, we provided for attempting to have this done during the 120-day financing contingency period, and the civil engineer feels very confident that he can do that. And I have the lot line adjustment an easement will need to be approved by the city of Watsonville. And I have a call tomorrow with the community development director to make sure that we have all of the steps, that we're aware of all the steps we need to go through to do that. So Josh, have I covered this clearly enough?
You
Okay.
definitely have, but I just wanted to,
Okay.
that was a minor but important point in the update. So thank you for that, Elizabeth.
Okay, okay. All right, and one other thing, I don't know if you need me to go into this, but
The address change?
the address reassignment.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you to discuss.
As part of all of this, we are going to request an address reassignment. And that also goes through the city of Watsonville, through the community development director, and I'll be talking with her tomorrow about that to make sure we have all of those steps in place. So then finally, we'll get rid of the problem that you folks have had for so many years of people not really understanding, you know, what the delivery situation was. So we'll get that resolved. And anything else, Josh, or?
No, that's it. Thank
Okay.
you, Elizabeth, and I really
Okay.
appreciate you throwing us.
Okay.
I
and
have
Mary, you look
I have
curious.
a quick question. I have
No
a quick
problem.
question.
Okay.
So the lot line adjustment, so when you're doing the lot line adjustment, are you trading a piece of the property to align that adjustment, or you just adjusting the lot line? Because you can do either, I think.
Well, no, if you move a line and it moves from one property to the other property, the area of dirt, of land underneath the area where the line was moved then becomes part of the new legal lot of record. So the driveway area now, that dirt will become part of the 270 Riverside property. That
Okay.
makes sense. Now, if we were going the other way, if say we had a property where we were also going the other way, then it you know, that land would be included in our site. If I'm making sense.
Yeah, no, the reason why I was asking is because when we bought our home many years ago, part of our driveway belonged to the neighbors. So we
Right.
did a lot line adjustment, and what we did is we traded the acreage, and it was small, so it's not even an acre, but it was
Yeah.
the small piece of land for a piece of our land in another spot, and we drew the line. So that's why I was wondering if
Okay.
you could have traded off. So
Okay.
that was, yeah.
If you know, if there was an opportunity to do that, the way this is configured, there is no opportunity to do that.
That's what I thought.
But if there had been, like, for example, if I'd spotted a few parking places over on the other side that we
Right.
could have included, I would have done that. But
Right, okay.
The way it's configured, no, but good question.
Okay.
You're a very good
Thank you.
question. You're welcome. Okay.
Anybody else have any questions for Elizabeth?
Carl, you look curious. He's
No,
muted,
I was
so-
attentive. I agree with everything you said.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, okay. All right. Well, then I'll sign off. Is that?
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks,
Great.
Elizabeth.
Have a good evening, everyone. Take care.
You
Bye-bye.
as well.
Thank you.
Okay, we are on to instructional material adoption.
So attached is the letter that I shared with the staff today during PD. We did day 2 of PD looking at instructional material adoptions and had a presentation and a spreadsheet of potential options for teachers in different departments. I was pleased with how the process went. Staff who are already working so hard, by and large, took this project on and are eager to move forward with this. I think it's going to be a lot of work, and I think we're acknowledging that at the outset, but hopefully long-term it reduces the stress and anxiety and prep work that teachers are currently experiencing. So that's off the ground. The letter outlines how that will take place over 10 weeks, with June 4th being the deadline to let me know when, what materials, what publisher materials the department would like for the upcoming school year.
Thank you. And then now to the Renaissance Star data.
Okay, let me get this up here. And Daniel, I'm going to share my screen. Let's see here. Okay, and I want to preface this. There is this big question out right now that seems like it's becoming more firmed up about whether the CASP SBAC will be administered this spring. it is looking like schools will have the option to administer it or use some other alternative assessment. And so SABA has administered the Renaissance Star assessment 3 times the school year. And we're going to look at fall to spring, fall 2020 to spring 2021, and in this report. But if that ends up being the case, then we could use Renaissance Star to meet that state and federal requirement. So we're going to start off here with reading in grade 6, and we're going from fall to spring. We have 4 levels here, level 1, 2, 3, and 4, with 4 being the highest. And what we see here is that the majority of our students are in levels 1 and 2. We actually saw the percentage of students increase in level 1 in the spring administration compared to the fall. And the number of students or percentage of students in level 2 decreased. So a number of factors might have gone into that. The numbers at the top stayed relatively stable, 16 to 17 and 7-3. And then as we go on to 7th grade, we see about half of our students scored a level 1 on the Renaissance Star assessment, 22% level 2, 20% level 3, and 8 and 9% level 4. And it's amazing how consistent that was from the fall to spring administration. No growth upward or downward, hardly at all. And then fall to spring math. This is fall, we had 38% of our students at level 1, 34 at level 2, 25 at level 3, and 3 at level 4. And then in the spring for 8th grade, we had 39 at level 1, 39 at level 2, 15, and 7. So I think what this is giving us a glimpse into is what's happening at home. And when I read this data, I see students who were successful with distance learning are continuing to be successful with distance learning, and students who are struggling with distance learning are continuing to struggle with distance learning, and maybe even more so as the year progresses. That is my conclusion from looking at this slide of data. Going on to high school, we see a similar pattern, albeit the levels improve here. So we see a lower percentage of students at a level 1 at the high school level in reading. So that's good to see. That means that we're making progress. And then at the level 2, we see in the 30s across the board. So again, that's also interesting to see the consistency there across not just fall to spring, but also grades 9 through 12. And then and then we see high 20s to low 30s for level 3, and then just a few students, 6% or less, except for grade 11 in the spring, they had 10% of their students score at level 4. And so this is in reading for the Renaissance Star exam. And then on this slide, we see completion rates. So really high completion rates across the board, 100% for both fall and spring administrations of the reading assessment. Fall, we had a few students not complete the reading assessment in grade 7 ELA, and in spring even less, so 97%, amazing. And then in grade 8, 100% of the students in that grade level completed the reading assessment for Renaissance Star. And then for high school, we'll see that our percentage completion hovers in the mid to high 90s. And I realize I sound like a weatherman talking about this, but we with a 93% completion rate in spring to for grade 11. So I think when I'm looking at this, I am really proud of our staff and teachers in particular for being able to see this assessment through to completion, because with everything that's going on with distance learning, I don't think a lot of schools would get this high a percentage of students completing the necessary assessments, and that speaks volumes about our staff and their dedication. All right, moving on to math. So here we are going to measure fall to spring again in grades 6, 7, and 8. And we see in 6th grade, about half of our students, a little bit more, we're measuring at a level 1. 7th grade, 41% and 40%. And then grade 8, a little uptick in math, with students in math in grade 8 who scored a level 1 from 21 to 32%. And then the percentages for level 2 stayed stable in 6th grade, decreased slightly in 7th grade, and stayed relatively stable in 8th grade. And then for level 3, we saw that the percentage of students scoring level 3 stayed relatively stable in 6th grade, increased in 7th grade. So it's great to see a growth there. It's a highlight. And then decreased in 8th grade. And then we had a few students who were scoring in that level 4, 5% in grade 6, just 1% in the spring administration though, and then 9 to 6 in grade 7 from fall to spring, and then 15 to 19. So similar pattern to reading, not a lot of movement on these scores. And again, my same observation, students who are successful continue to be successful, students who are struggling continue to struggle. Going on to high school. So we see our percentage of students scoring low in our assessments in or level 1 in grade 9 is low in grade 9 and relatively low in grade 10. So we see 25 to 17 and then 32 to 31. We do see a higher percentage of students scoring level 1 in 11th grade. So a little bit over half, and that number actually increased in the spring. And then the percentage of students at a level 2 in 9th grade increased from the fall to spring administration. So we see some growth there. We saw a lot of growth in grade 10 from 20 to 30%. So that's great to see. And then a slight decrease in, well, actually not a decrease in the percentage of students scoring a level 2 in 11th grade. And then just to round this out, we have consistency in grade 9 for levels 3 and 4. For levels, for grade 10, we saw the percentage of scoring a level 4 did decrease a bit from 19 to 10%. And then for grade 11, slight increase for a level 4, that's great to see, and a slight increase for grade 3, which is also great to see. So percentage completion for math, here we see 100% completion in grade 6, 97 in the spring administration. For grade 7 fall, 91% of the students completed the assessment. In the spring, 96%. And then in 8th fall, we saw 94% of the students completing the assessment. In grade 8 spring, 99%. So again, just, I don't know, I'm really proud of that and blown away by the students being able to do that, given everything that's going on, and the teachers, faculty, and ability to make sure that this got through to completion. And then for grade 11, participation, or excuse me, completion of the Renaissance Star math assessment. So we saw 90 and then 88 for grade 9, 89, and then 92 for grade 10. And then we did have a fall off here for grade 11, 93% of the students completed it in the fall administration, and then only 75% in the spring. And that is our Renaissance Star data. Does anybody have any questions?
Nope, just appreciate the staff and all that they're doing with getting these assessments and the completion rate. Just reiterating what you said, Josh, that's great to see those completion rates. So, especially
Josh,
in the English side of it. So.
I have a brief comment about what you said at the outset. So it does look like California has received the approval from the feds to allow Renaissance, in this case, Renaissance Star, to be used instead of the STAR test. However, since you are in the first year of your new charter, there may be an advantage to, because this is going to be a hard year for so many students. And as a charter, you have to prove yourself over the coming 5 years of your new charter. And so therefore, it may be advantageous to SABA to actually test students using the STAR tests. I know some schools, especially schools in their first 1 or 2 years of their charter term, are doing this for strategic reasons, because as we know, it is very important to show growth over each term of the charter. So it's just something to consider.
So you're suggesting that we should administer the CASP to show growth over the term of the charter?
Yeah, I meant to say CASP. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, and I think that makes sense. Obviously, a big undertaking to make that happen. The only thing I would say to that is technically we are in the final year of our current charter term, and our first year of our new charter term will be next school year.
Good
And
point.
so,
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, I will take that into consideration and bring that back to the administrative team to discuss. But I think that's where I would say, all right, well, we'll see what happens next year, but we'll look at that as kind of year one, because we know that, I'll be good.
That's a good point. I was thinking that this was year 1, but you're absolutely right. This is year 5.
Yeah.
Then there's probably relatively 0 reasons to administer CASP when you are using Renaissance Star, which is tied or tries to tie to, or correlate to CASP.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Sure.
So Josh, would one STAR test replace all of SBAC?
I don't know. That's a great question.
Because yeah, for some context, for those of you that don't know about the STAR test, it's only half an hour long. And as a teacher, I'm very wary of using this test as a progress monitoring tool the way we have been, because it's not possible to assess the same standards on every single test because it's only 30 minutes long. So that's why our comparative data may look kind of weird, is because each test isn't necessarily testing the same standards, because we don't have time to. And the fact that it was only half an hour long is something that was really appealing to teachers, and it's why we were able to implement it so well. But the drawback of that is that we're not assessing the same standards. So that's why I was curious if the data that we submitted to the state could be a composite of all 3 tests versus just one, because it's really high stakes. Like, I don't know what standards are going to be on a 30-minute test. Like, what if they don't get them? That doesn't mean I didn't teach them anything the whole year.
That's a great point.
Yes. Well, I think, yeah, I mean, that's a great consideration, and we can look at that. There's a number of factors that go into this. In terms of the high stakes, the dashboard is suspended. So the public view on this data, it's not like this is going to show up on, some Google search or something like that, per se. And what I remain unclear about is how EAP will be impacted by not having CASP. Maybe that's just suspended as well. And it might be just that I have not read up on that, but that's another question that I would have for that. But in terms of the high stakeness nature of the test, I don't see this impacting SABA detrimentally. And individual students, again, it's that EAP in 11th grade, and I'd have to look into what is required to, if that still even exists. So.
Okay. Great. Now we are on to board recruitment, and Nick, this is yours.
Everybody, this is just a quick reminder that as we move into the late spring, our goal for the end of the spring, or for June 30th, was to have 1 or 2 additional board members. The best way to generate additional board members is with existing board members. So just a reminder that if you haven't, or even if you have, please continue to reach out to people in the community to ask if they have interest in serving on this great schools board. you know, I think we can, I would be happy to do any research that any of you board members would like me to do on either individuals or groups of individuals. For instance, going to the Community Foundation of Santa Cruz County or the Community Foundation of Monterey County. But those are more scattershot or sort of broad approaches. The more direct route to getting additional board members, as I said, with your guys' contacts. So happy to follow up with any of you or all of you if you would like, or please do follow up with me. But wanted to just remind you that we have 5 hardworking board members, and our goal for the coming year is to have 6 or 7. Partly because you know, other people should be aware of the great work that SEBA is doing, and partly you know, when you have a couple people who can't make it, then you're in danger of not being able to hold a meeting. So obviously you're aware of that, but I'm here to help, and so please reach out, or I can reach out as well if you've got thoughts. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Okay, if that is the end, it looks like, unless there's any final comments.
Yeah, I have a real quick one here. Katrina asked a question an hour ago and we didn't answer it before she logged out.
Oh,
But Josh, it's a legitimate question that she asked. It's in the chat room. It's under the new full-time policy, is it possible for a teacher to become 1.2 as needed?
I don't know that we've ever had a 1.2 staff member employed here. And my answer would be yes, as operational needs demand.
Yeah, and it's, I wouldn't say it's done all the time in schools, but it is done fairly regularly. You have an extra class hanging out there and you can't hire a 0.2 person. You know, you can offer to your regular staff for the extra 0.2. So
and
I
I've
would
seen
say
that
yeah.
as well.
Yeah. So when you see Katrina, tell her yes.
Okay, will do.
Thanks for bringing that
catching
to the attention. I didn't even see that, Larry.
Yeah, it was after we had already finished the discussion on that item, so I
Oh,
think that's why
okay.
we didn't address it right away. But thanks for bringing that
Okay.
up, Larry.
Okay, I think we are finished and it is 8:25. So, no, sorry, 7:20. What am I? Yes,
We haven't been
7:25.
here that long.
Wait a minute. 7:25, and the meeting is now adjourned. So thank you.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks
for
for being
sticking it out with us, Emily.
Yeah, thanks for being so indulgent of all my